Looks like we're clear, Larry.
We are.
All right, well, I'll officially call the meeting to order and start with an announcement of a check over $25,000. That was for HO Penn Machinery Company for a trailer mounted generator for the, I believe it's the water department.
Yeah,
Which
two of them actually.
Came out of the capital fund. That was $160,735. And when I first saw this, I didn't remember it, but I think it was approved, what we said, about 4 years ago, Larry.
It's at least that, yeah. It's been a while. It's been in the work. Those are two generators, trailer mounted. They'll be used for the, well, for the sewer pump stations is one of the primary reasons, but they can also be brought around to other locations as needed, as we outfit different locations.
Yeah, and I know there's also that, yeah, the sewer pumps down by, was it Arthur train station? Seems to be a recurring issue. So nice to have that flexibility as well. I don't have any other announcements. I don't know if anybody else does.
Yeah, let me just mention that, as I have earlier, that the Irvington Woods Community Forest Management Plan is on March 14th at 7 p.m. And it's, I think it would be very important to have as many people as possible come. It's a virtual meeting, and there's going to be a presentation by Miguel Berrios of LBS Ecological, working with the village to help to determine best management for improving the health of the forest. It's important that as many people as possible attend so they can get educated about what needs to be done, what has to be done, what's already been done, and again, what we need to do to save the woods. Thanks.
Thank you.
So,
Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
yeah, we'll be sending around the Zoom link to that then, Larry? Larry,
Yes, I'll make sure. Yes, I'm sure it'll go out as a board and as a rec announcement.
Great. Okay, so then we'll move on to correspondence. We had three pieces of correspondence. The first was from Sarah Cox at Commemorate. It's basically asking if, due to the delay of the memorial garden for enslaved Africans that we're working on, the enslaved African burial ground down by Buckout Street, if we would consider putting up a sign kind of as a placeholder until we can get the work going and figure out what kind of remediation we need to do to the actual land because of Hurricane Ida. So I think we'll be happy to consider that request. The next piece of correspondence was from Chet Kerr, which was asking us to add a priority, which would be to finalize a community forest management plan that's currently developed, and then, you know, to kind of work on that plan. So Larry, I think you stole a little bit of the thunder that, you know, obviously the work is going forward, and, you know, I think, you know, once we have the plan, then we can figure out what we have to do. But I think we're all committed to doing what we can to save the Irvington woods, mostly from deer, but I'm sure there's other things as well. And then lastly, there was a request from Scenic Hudson that came, I guess, to you, Larry, if we would sign on to, I guess, get money for the New York, New Jersey Watershed Protection Act. You know, to basically ask to make sure that the Hudson Estuary is part of that request. I don't see any reason not to sign on for this. Remember, we did something similar when they were studying the flood repercussions. Maybe it was 8 years ago now or so, after one of the hurricanes. So unless anyone has any objections, I think we should probably, you know, complete their sample letter, Larry, and get it signed.
No objection here.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And hopefully they reached out to all the other congressional district Congress people in the appropriate congressional districts. It looks to, you know, cross a lot of them up and down the Hudson River there. So Larry, you'll take care of that.
Absolutely.
Great. Next up, we have public comment. We have a hand up, Sarah Cox.
Well, hello. I just want to take just a minute of your time that on behalf of the Commemorate Committee, I just want to say we feel tremendous gratitude for your enthusiastic partnership in expanding the historical storytelling in our village. So a big thank you very much. That's all.
I'll just add to that. I think it's going to be a great kind of, the fact that we're going to have something on Main Street and then something, kind of in a place, kind of a sacred ground, I think is really interesting. I think, the fact that we're doing both is important. And I think they tell a slightly different story. And I think they address a slightly different audience too. I think there's going to be some that are going to look at both, but I think for the casual observer, you're not going to be able to, kind of miss the Vinnie Bagwell right on Main Street. And then I think, I just always envisioned, it's very close to Dow's Lane. It's a very easy walk, and, kind of having those discussions with Dow's Lane students walking down to the burial site. I just think it's great for dialogue. And I think that that project is, an equally important one. And Hurricane Ida slowed us down, but it definitely won't stop us for good. So as long as we have land down there still, Larry, we're going to get it done. And hopefully we'll actually improve the area, and with this in mind. So I think in some ways, hopefully the delay works to the benefit of the project. I think that'd be my positive spin on the delay. But thank you, Sarah, for all the work you guys have done and continuing to push us and the school board to get us over the finish line on both projects. Anybody else? Otherwise, you'll have another chance at the end. I will move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions on the consent agenda items? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve them if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, we have the budget workshop. And we're leading off with the building department. I see Ed. There he is.
Hi, Ed.
How are you? Press some buttons here. There we go.
Nice.
Thank you for having me to your budget meeting tonight.
Sure.
I know I say this every year, and I was telling Larry I'm getting tired of saying it, but we're very busy still. I've got a few stats if you want to hear them.
Sure.
Building department workload has increased by applications 59% from the year before. Building permits are up 62% from the year before. Inspections are up 82% from the year before. And through realtors, real estate sales are up 17% for the fiscal year. I'm sorry, for the calendar year of 2021. So it really created a lot more work than we had planned for, and we were behind before, and we're still behind, but we're not behind as much thanks to some of your help you gave us earlier in 2021. I don't know if you're aware, but we took over the fire inspections after the unfortunate passing of Nicholas Sperry. We're in the middle of developing a new inventory that was required, that needed a little bit of work. We're also updating the scheduling process for the coming years. A quick overview is businesses with more than 2 families need an inspection and housing with 2 families. More than 2 families need a fire inspection every 3 years, and hazardous spaces in places over 50 and assembly need an inspection every year. So that's actually a lot of work and time has gone into that this year and last year. You guys adopted the New York Stretch Code. We've generated an HVAC checklist. We've developed a climate and geographic design chart, including a manual J criteria and a prescriptive design criteria. Needed a lot of work to be done. Our template is now being used in most communities that have the stretch code. our specific documents. They've taken ours and they've just put their name on it, basically. Education in 2021, we did 78 hours of training. Over 28 hours was in the energy code in 2021. We're doing archiving. We had help from Larry's office when they had some free time. We're completely scanned to inception on building permits and everything in the building department. That would be planning board, including some files. We're now going through files and draws of, we'll call it stuff. It's all good stuff. It just needs to be archived. So we're doing well with that. And my favorite is revenues. My favorite. We're up 126% from the year before. $853,000 in 2021. The year before it was only 377,000. So we're pretty busy. Our fiscal year, as of last week, our revenues were in the 624,000. Brenda, I have another 100,000 on my desk for you this week. I'm sorry, we're a little busy. So I just want to give you an overdraft of where we are. I provided Larry, I don't know if you want to put it up, my annual report, which shows all these numbers. If you're interested in them, Larry can forward it to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna forward the document. I will put it up on the screen, and it's admittedly it's very wide and small, but so it's a little hard to see. But I can do some zooming in on it.
Okay. I mean, if you just want to zoom into the last row, I mean, it's everything basically. I can summarize the whole report. This is something I started in 2001. So it kind of gives you a history of why we're always a little busier. Yeah, you really can't read that, Larry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm going to zoom in so we can just point out some of the high numbers here. So, just building permit activity is the top row right here. I know the labels aren't here.
It's just insane. It's just really just the numbers are nuts.
What was interesting, Ed, and is that as you were talking about the numbers of 21 versus 20, some might think that 20 was a down year because of the pandemic. And while there were a few months that were lost, and there was lower activity, it actually wasn't that much lower than any of the other years.
We broke up even just about. I mean, we're in our average.
Yeah.
Because 2019 was a higher year. So yeah, in 2000 we were about average, which for the pandemic was interesting.
Yeah.
But we had the pandemic to deal with it, so that was the trouble. But you can see 2021, the numbers just really exploded. We're not anticipating this to continue.
So let me show you. I'm going to scroll down. All the other numbers you can look at when we send around the spreadsheet. But if you look at the revenues are on the bottom line here.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and I think that's a telltale.
So that's a
so with that
activity.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch back over since this schedule is a little hard to read through Zoom. But do you see the budget summary here?
Right. So the budget summary, you can read it for yourself. Will increase revenues, projected revenues. I feel comfortable. Larry felt comfortable, and I agreed with him that would be okay.
So that's going from 230,000 up to 300,000.
Right.
Even though the revenues are significantly higher this year, I think that's agrees that that's probably not sustainable at that level.
Exactly. And if you look, that's supported in the last 6 years, other than and over supported this year in 2021, going up that much. And then the change in part-time and full-time staff are the only real requests we're asking for. We're going to have a small budget change for a new computer system this year, but I don't think that's a big deal. I think we can absorb it.
Let me just explain on the staffing. So as the board would remember, back in July of 2021, in response to these levels of activity, the board did agree post-budget. So after last year's budget was adopted, you agreed to convert a position from part-time to full-time. And so this is now just flowing through the budget for this upcoming year. So, by doing it mid-year. So while we can call it a budget request, the decision was made back in the summer to add that staff. This is now, after the fact, so to speak. It's not normally how we do business, obviously, but we were trying to respond to a pretty significant uptick in activity in a responsible way. So we had that conversation in the summer. The net result, as you can see, although we did add, costs in terms of salaries, obviously the revenues are there and the activity is there to support it more than support it. Any questions?
I always think when there's a net decrease, you don't get a lot of questions, Ed. But so how are you doing just digging out of, I know when we talked like over the summer, you were still, you're getting through permits as quickly as you could. How's that backlog now?
We have no backlog. We have no backlog. We have a 1 to 2 week backlog, which is traditionally normal. Our problem is the haste and the paperwork we're receiving is not as complete as it used to be. People are in more of a rush, and homeowners because they're home more, just have more anxiety towards wanting their stuff right away. So we're dealing with a lot of hand holding, which you can't say no to, but it really does bog the system. But it's manageable. The fire inspections, if we weren't taking on the fire inspections, everything would be fine. We'll probably be more comfortable with fire inspections mid-year. We had a lot of work to do to get it into a format that we sent out. I don't know if you heard complaints yet, but we sent out a request for attributes with a letter saying that if you can't do it, we'll do it for you. Just give us your name, phone number, email address so we can schedule an appointment, and we'll help you with the attributes when we get there. That's pretty much it. We got a lot of projects I'm giving Larry a hand with, which we're happy to do. And he can go over that another day with you. There's quite a few projects going on, both post Ida and some capital projects that have long been overdue. And that's about it. I think we're serving the public as best as can with the volume. I'm disappointed that we're behind, but we're not behind for any other reason than the volume. It's all good problems. It's just people didn't fill out the forms right. They need a little help finding the answers, that kind of thing. It's not like we're behind because they can't do it. It's not allowed, or there's issues between the owner and the building department. It's just volume. And
I think along those lines too. I think you spoke with Larry. I know I spoke with Larry about working with our restaurants. Now that the kind of post-COVID days, I think the kind of our leniency on allowing outdoor dining and things like that. I think as a board we kind of informally pulled each other. We're pulled, and we kind of want to support our businesses, especially as they're still kind of recovering. I think you agreed. Larry agreed. So I think we want to empower you and kind of let you be able to help the restaurants figure it out, and any impediments that we have in zoning codes or any other anywhere else kind of tweak those to make it easier for you, to make it easier for them. So
yeah. So I mean, what I would like to do, and I don't think this is the forum for it at this time, because I don't want to single out any one restaurant for any one thing at this time. I need a better understanding of where you guys are going. And then once I have that, we can work out a way to work with them to make sure that they're informed early in the process if there is a change or if there's not going to be a change.
Yeah.
Either, like I said, I'm just looking for direction. I'm not looking for a yes or no or do this or do that.
Sure.
We just want to give them all the time in the world if there is not going to be direction. If there's going to be some changes, we want to give them a heads up that there's going to be changes and to stay tuned to you guys.
Larry, do you think maybe we should just try to meet next work session next Wednesday to kind of talk about this? Because I with spring in the air, people are going to want to start talking about their outdoor dining stuff. So.
And that's kind of the urgency I gave Larry last week.
Yeah.
I think some of it needs to be in an executive session. I don't think change needs to be spoken for good or bad reasons.
Okay. We can figure out the logistics, but I think time is of the essence. So
Yeah.
Definitely. We'll move on that.
Great. Anybody else have questions for Ed?
Well, Ed, I was going to ask you when you can certainly feel free to make a no comment. But the board's going to be investigating swing sets and sheds and zoning. Do you want to venture an opinion on that, or is that something that you want to hold in?
Whatever you guys want. It's your village. I mean, I don't think swing sets should be in the front yards, but we have all these issues of corner lots and stuff like that. This is the best part of my job. I don't care. Whatever you say, I'm going to do. Yeah, but you have to. It's not as easy as it thinks. I brought some comments about the only issue I had with the last draft I saw was the use of the word front yard. I want to change to primary front yard. That's all. So that I would make a corner lot. One of the front yards would be a side yard, which is good for everybody. So if you're going to use the word front yard, I prefer it to be primary front yard.
Thanks.
Great. Well, we'll get you back on, and we'll meet up soon there, Ed.
Great.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Next up, we have Recreation and Parks.
I believe Rick is also joining us on the panel.
I was just going to say, do we want to add Rick
Yeah.
from our pack as well?
Yeah, so I did that. Let's see if he jumps on.
He was okay either way. He
Okay.
said he would jump in if there was something.
Okay. All right. Well, I offered for him to be panelist. If he clicks the button, then he's panelist. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
All right.
Happy birthday, by the way, right? Was it just your birthday?
Brenda and I, same day, last Thursday.
And Brenda got herself surgery, which was a great gift.
Yes,
Yeah.
I need to teach her a little bit about celebrating.
I'm saving
Excellent.
it. Okay.
All right.
But did you want to jump into it, or how do you want to do it, John?
I'm game. I'll take it any way you want. I can talk. You have
I'm going
numbers.
to put your summary up on the screen so you can talk to that. You can, talk about other things as you go along.
Well, before we talk about real numbers, I would like to just mention some of, I think, what are the really important challenges ahead for our department, our committees, and all of the things that you trust us with. And that's that we have some real important work to do. I know Dr. Lonke mentioned it. I have to stress again how important I think the meeting is next Monday. We are committed to doing everything possible to trying to bring back life in the Irvington Woods. It is not a small feat. It cannot be done by a few people. It will take the entire community to buy in, but it's a step at a time. We have some amazing people working on it. And the first step to trying to let the public know what we found out in our study will begin next Monday night. In addition to that, there are things going on with the Irvington Woods Park on a regular basis. This past Saturday, another 40 volunteer day with 32 teens in the woods. And Brian, if I'm not mistaken, Ronan was one of them, removing, I can't even tell you how many more barberry bushes from the woods. And that's the type of commitment we have and we need to do. So please encourage friends and neighbors to look in and to see what's going on and talk about where we're going. The second goal and something that's so important is we all know the pressures that our teens have been through because of COVID and because of virtual learning. and because the lack of being around friends and people and family. And we feel that pressure of finding as many ways to get them opportunities to get out and do things, whether it's in the woods, in the parks, on the courts, on the fields. It's a tremendous challenge to keep finding things they want to do and offer them. I'm working with a group of students now on a skate park type of project. It's me and a bunch of students. I'm excited about some of the work they've done, but those are the types of things we have to do. We have to listen. We have to try to help. Getting our seniors back online is the third thing. We are very excited that the first real in-building event will be held next Wednesday, March 14th, with a St. Patrick's Day celebration. Actually, it's March 16th. I apologize. With the St. Patrick's Day celebration, we expect to allow 60 seniors to attend the event, and we also expect to deliver an additional 30 to 40 meals to seniors who can't come out or we just can't accommodate. So we're very excited about that, especially because for those of you who know, St. Patrick's Day is very important to Joan Armstrong. So it's a great first program, and we're looking forward to it. The other thing is, for us in terms of our goals, is more for everyone. We have what people need, want, and should get out and do. And I've got to, with my staff, continue to find more ways to get people to enjoy our parks, enjoy everything we have, and try to do more for everyone and include all. So, we've been working on the summer since the beginning of January. We've got programs in place. Day camp is basically set up. Teenscape's ready to go. Our leagues are ready. So we're ready to get it going and to pick up. And we're very hopeful that our numbers will exceed where we were at the last full year of 2019. And not only will our programs continue to grow, but our revenues will continue to grow. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. As far as the budget goes, Larry, you want to put that page up now? I'll go through some of those with you. Again, I'd like to take the time now so I don't forget later to thank Brenda and Larry for their help in getting us to this point. What you have here is basically a summary of the changes that will occur on the following 20 to 30 pages of, again, all of the budget areas that we're responsible for. I don't think I'll explain each one, but rather maybe highlight some of the bigger numbers and then allow you to ask any questions you may have. Under park salaries, there will be a transition in the department. Chris DePauli, our park foreman and a village employee for 40 years, is expected to retire sometime sometime this summer. And Larry and Brenda and I have been working on a new plan for how the department will be staffed. There's still some things that have to fall into place, but the number you see there is the difference between Chris's retirement, bringing on a new person in the title of groundskeeper, keeping on our current park laborer as a flex employee, and eliminating $60,000 in salary for part-timers to put that flex full-time person into that slot. Brenda, did I explain that properly? Thank you. Larry, you okay with that?
No, that's correct. And we'll have more in-depth discussions about those plans going forward. It involves personnel, so we'll talk to the board about that in executive session. Not tonight.
Right. The next big number that appears is under other maintenance expenses, $19,000. I don't have to tell you how expensive it is to buy things, to get things, equipment getting fixed. We usually have to send all of our equipment out for maintenance because there's just not any way to get. You can't get a mower done when there's 2 police cars waiting to be fixed. There's no way we can expect that. So we're always looking for different ways to get our equipment back up and running as quickly as possible. We're also committed to continue what you helped us to start, what Larry helped to resupply in this past year, and that's to keep getting away from gas-operated machines as much as possible, use our electric wherever, whenever possible, with the understanding that until that big, heavy kind of stuff comes along, we still will need gas at certain times. But we've made huge strides with that, and we'll continue to do so. The recreation salaries is basically there, assuming you will approve the request for increases for non-union employees. So that's just an automatic. A small thing, which is a little bit exciting. We haven't had window decorating around Halloween in close to 15 years in Irvington, and we are scheduled to bring it back this fall. We're working with the Girl Scouts right now and hoping they will co-sponsor the event with us, and it should be a fun day. It used to be one of the biggest days of the year. Teenscape has a number of 15,000. Our revenue projection is up there too. We did raise our fees a little bit. We are extremely concerned about gas costs for Teenscape. The transportation there, 4 days a week, usually we're in a bus going somewhere. So the potential, the continuation of the rise in gas costs will really put a burden on us. Day camp also, but we don't travel as much with day camp. Down to celebrations, again, trying to get things for the public, for people. We're looking to bring back movies in the park starting this summer, and with beautiful Matheson Park ready to host it, we expect to bring back at a minimum 1 movie a month and 1 concert a month, and to go with them each time one of those is on. We'll likely have 2 to 3 food trucks invited in to participate, trying to give the public a chance to say, hey, it's the second Friday night of the month or whatever night we choose, and people and families can expect to spend the night in Matheson. If you want to listen to the music, you can. If you want to buy some food, you can. If you want to watch your kids in the playground, you can. So we think bringing those things back are something that the public would really like. In our evaluation of how Matheson Park went this summer, when RPAC interviewed the staff, 2 of the things that came up the most were, number 1, people asked for more things for adults to do in the park. And number 2, they asked for things like the movies. As far as the adult things in the park, we do have plans, and you'll see some of it in the capital budget. We are hoping to build horseshoe pits in the north end of the park. We're looking to put up portable volleyball nets that can come down when needed, cornhole permanent stations. We'd like to make the north end of the park where older people can hang out, where the front and the middle of the park stays for families and kids. Not that anyone couldn't go anywhere, but though that's something that will involve a change for us. The Irvington Woods Park, the numbers there are kind of just something you approved last year. It's just Brenda, can you just explain what's happening there? Or Larry?
No, that's just a reclassification from a part-time position that went to full-time. So you see the 67,500 as an increase and then as a decrease on the hourly line.
Thank you. The other thing that's new one thing we changed in the budget this year, you may have noticed that the line of 7989 used to be known as the O'Hara Nature Center, because years ago when we began, everybody just thought that's what it was. Well, it's really the Irvington Woods Park, which the O'Hara Nature Center is part of. So we correctly, I think, have changed that line in the budget to now be titled the Irvington Woods Park. We added an equipment line there, which it did not have, and we've started it with $7,500. The reason we had to do that is because we've been working hand in hand with Miguel, who's doing the study. We know there are things we'll be able to do in the park ourselves that we will not have to go out and bring an outside landscape company in for, or an arborist, because both CJ and Peter Strom are arborists. And if we give them the right equipment, they're going to be able to take trees down that we would not have to, that we otherwise would have to spend a great deal more money on if we were to call in a tree company. I'll give you an example too of how much going on. the tree study on Monday night's going to indicate X number of hazardous trees in the Irvington woods. They've all been labeled, and there's numbers of them, and they're labeled to a degree of, emergency to should and must and whatever. CJ Riley and Peter Strom have already taken down close to 20 of those hazardous trees on their own during their regular work schedules. They'd do a little bit more if I had some better equipment for them. So this line is to make sure they have what they need as they move forward doing their work. There's also a little extra money that was pumped into the Irvington Woods Park for both events and programs. When we've told you much about it, the VIP program with the high school, which we are talking to them now about them returning next year and the possibility of paying us for hosting the program for them. CJ's got an apple grafting class coming up. I met with Chet Kerr today, talking about ways we can make sure we get the word out to all the environmental and nature groups in the community. So we'll be doing a lot more of that also. I would like to say too, and I know the time isn't right, but Chet's letter actually does hit a home run for me too, because I do think the board adopting a critical look at what we're going to do with the woods as we go forward. The woods are a tremendous financial resource for the community, and they're very valuable. And if they continue to die and go away, at some point, that loss will have a financial impact on the community. So when we're finished, I would like you to consider, if not this time around, next time around, adopting it as a priority for the board. So, that's basically what I have there. Again, when you consider how many lines there are in our budget, there are not that many changes, really. We, again, are very hopeful that we will be back to normal by this summer. Starting in April, people will be able, as long as the weather cooperates, to make requests for the parks again. We don't have the bathrooms open yet. As you know, in case you get asked, there's no heat in any of our park bathrooms. We must make sure that the chance for frost has pretty much passed us before we open them, especially the bathrooms in Matheson Park and in Scenic Hudson. To allow events to go in without bathrooms is just not a good thing to do. We will get them open as quickly as possible. We also hope to have the tennis courts up and operating with reservation system in place within the next few weeks. So we were on the ball fields today for the first time. The varsity baseball team used Memorial Park. We expect the high school softball teams to be down at Scenic Hudson within the next few days. So spring is in the air. Any questions?
Nope. I guess the only thing I wanted to mention was, we briefly spoken about how we're hoping to expand Rocktoberfest a bit to, also encompass some of the 150th anniversary celebrations. Since that's a one-off type event, though, I think we can use, money from contingency rather than put that in the budget.
We do have a Rocktoberfest event under the trust and agency accounts. And we do have a small balance in there. So I think Brenda can just tell us when that's able to be run again. And I think all the Rocktoberfest expenses are best served coming out of that line.
Good. I can give you a recap. I can take a look.
Yeah, and we're going to kick off a meeting. I know the Historical Society wants to be involved as well since it's the 150th anniversary. So, but again, I don't think it's something that we have to put in the budget because it is a one-off kind of event. I guess the only other item that kind of wanted to discuss a little bit was fireworks. Obviously, we haven't had, FACE hasn't been active in the last few years with COVID. So, we don't, I believe, have a nice balance in the FACE account. So, do we want to, ask RPAC if they want to put that in the budget going forward, if we want to do it again as kind of a one-off until we figure it out. But I think we're going to want fireworks, right? So,
after the last fireworks, if I'm not mistaken, and Brenda can show you at a later time. I think we took the big chunk of money that Rocktoberfest had made, and we paid off the last bill that was in there, or at least a big chunk of it. So
Yeah.
there has been no money budgeted. I know listen, I'll copy Ed's line, we'll do what you say. The only thing I would ask is if you're going to budget for fireworks, you'll need to budget around $21,000. And my only request is please don't ask me to find it in my budget in order to have it. If you see fit and you want them on July 4th, I do have to scramble a little to make sure I can get it in place. We may have to go for a little bit of a smaller show because I do think the cost has gone up for them. But that doesn't mean we can't do it. You could also, and I'm kind of taking on a major task here because I'm not sure how to do it yet, but I do think the 150th celebration is a very important thing. And I think anything we can do to use the rest of this year to bring that out is a great idea. And whether it be to do them on July 4th and make it the celebration, or find a way to see if there can be a merger of Rocktoberfest with the fireworks. Again, I'm not quite sure the logistics of how we could do it yet, but I think it's worth looking at, and that's a decision I think needs to come from the board.
Yep.
With the discussion with the chief.
Sure. I think my thought almost was there too, Joe, was if we wanted to have, so I think people are going to want to have, July 4th fireworks. But if we were talking to the firm, like the company that does the fireworks for us that we've used forever, if we say, hey, what can you do if we want to do a second, fireworks this year in September as well? So I think that would be kind of a nice way to do it. So we're not, getting rid of our tradition to celebrate something, but kind of adding on to it. So I think we can kind of, maybe I'll talk to Rick and Larry Lonke and see if we want to, open it up to RPAC some more. But I can't imagine too many people in RPAC are going to, be against fireworks, especially if we're going to be funding them with the budget. So.
Yeah, I listen, there's a lot of planning that goes in, but it's the worst day of the year until it's over. And then it's the greatest day of the year to be us because of the noise and how happy it makes people. So I would be more than thrilled to take the challenge on again. And with the thought that we could maybe do it at both events, there's something worthy of 150 years of celebration. It's just a matter of letting me know, I can reach out to all the right contacts that we need for the fireworks as early as tomorrow morning. And I can look at prices for both events. But I do think it's important that you're going to need to budget a minimum of $21,000 for July 4th if you want a similar show to what we've done in the past. And I do have to see what change there might be with the police department and whether or not at this late time, because remember, their schedules are done way ahead of time. And what they had asked months ago, and at that time, we weren't sure we'd have the possibility of fireworks. So, but, knowing Chief Pignatelli, he'll do whatever he can to make it happen for us.
Yeah, I think we should, maybe if you want to start the ball rolling tomorrow, we can come up with a decision by the end of the week, reach out to the chief,
Sure.
reach out to the fireworks company, and look at the possibility of having twice, having two nights of fireworks.
Well,
So it's not only 150 years, we also we didn't celebrate anything last year. So
yeah, we got a lot to celebrate. So
yeah.
One of the other things I didn't mention, I do want to throw out is we are planning on having a Main Street event. We had such a great experience at the tree lighting this year that we're going to try to have maybe not so much a battle of the bands, but schedule a band for each side of the steps of Town Hall. And then Mike DiNardo's already working on it for both Rocktoberfest and this event, kind of line up the hill with food trucks and get everybody to come out and listen to music and grab themselves something to eat and just hang out one night. I think it's worth it. I think in the long run, it could be good for businesses. I know, some of our eateries will take a hit that night, but I still think in the long run, events like that bring more people who find that what Irvington has. So we're going to be looking to do that also. And I'll be talking to the theater to see if they'd like to help with some of the selection of the performers, because as you know, my taste in music is about as good as my taste in clothes. So.
Hey,
Yes,
Joe,
I'm-
speaking of the, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Mitch, you started.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Arlene. Speaking of the theater, when you were going over the events, you mentioned doing movies and music in the park. Have you thought about reaching out to the theater to make that a co-production?
Well, Greg and I talk a lot. In fact, we had conversation today because Greg's going to be working with me and the mayor on the stage project for Matheson Park. I did not bring that up because it's really not part of the operating budget, but I know Greg, Brian, myself, and RPAC, and many others would like to see us pursue a much bigger and better type of a permanent stage in the park. We've just started that process, and we'll be working with the theater. And because of the success of what we did last summer together, I think anytime we deal with things like this, we'll always reach out and see if Greg has any thoughts or ideas to be with it. We really partnered quite well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Because I thought it was a natural combination, and I
Sure.
throw it out there. Thank you, Joe.
No question.
Yes, I have a question about other events. So I guess how do we see sort of Juneteenth fitting into the events in Irvington, since we're coming up on our third annual? I know the village up to this point, it's been sort of privately funded, but how we sort of think this year of Juneteenth is going to be a very, very big event because it's going to be the unveiling of Vinnie's statue. But I think in terms of having that event, hopefully that's going to be sort of one of these events that brings people to Irvington over time.
Well, the decision on where that goes, I think, lies in the board's hands. The one thing you have to remember about all of the special events that we run are either run by our department or the theater. And when we're running them, we have to make sure that we're running them with all of the village guidelines that we follow as far as how we do things, how we spend money, how we do purchase orders, how we raise funding for it. And sometimes when you work with an outside group on something like that, there becomes some complications because and I'm not saying this group is that way, Arlene, I'm just talking about in general. We created FACE because we still wanted the village to have somewhat of a say when they ran events to make sure it fit and it wasn't against what the village thought were appropriate activities. So even though FACE presents things, the village still has the ability to say yes or no to what they're doing. Fireworks, it all goes through us. So if the board felt Juneteenth should be a village event, you have options. You could say, hey, Joe, can you take that on as one of our special events and take the lead on it? Or you can work with the people doing it now and figure out a way how you want the village to be involved and possibly allow them more freedoms than they would have if they're following, my pattern. I lead our events pretty much every single one of them because I try to be very, very consistent and not treat any group differently than any other. And I'm not saying I'd be for or against it. That's your decision. But people sometimes, I'll give you an example. It was a learning curve with the theater last year. Even Greg Allen will admit it to you. There were things that we expect that they may not have expected from personnel that we had to come to some common grounds on, and we did. But it's a definitely something. If you want me to be part of a discussion on, I will. Or if you want to you guys want to make the decision and tell me where we are with it, I'm fine with that also. My role right now with Juneteenth has simply been to try to make sure the day is coordinated with all the other activities in town so that everyone has the best chance to maximize their event. That's why I tried to coordinate the traffic, the police, the school, the Juneteenth event, the unveiling, just to make sure everybody knew they could do their thing.
Any other questions for Joe? Well, thanks,
Arlene,
Joe.
was that okay?
Otherwise, we'll be in touch later in the week then, Joe, about fireworks, and we can figure out exactly what we're doing and report back to everybody.
But just as a summary, though, just to make sure I'm clear, I'm going to move forward and look at what it would take to try to have fireworks scheduled for July 4th, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a Monday this year. All right, so
Check.
we'll move forward on that. I'll get prices together. I have a meeting scheduled with the chief tomorrow morning after the the CAB meeting, and I will talk to him and just let him know it might be back on the table. And then you're going to work to get the initial face meeting scheduled, because if we're going to try to incorporate some type of fireworks there, the setup and the design has to be something the entire committee has some input on.
Yep.
And I'll move all of those things forward.
Great.
Then I
Okay.
think my role was to check all the balances between face money, I guess, Rocktoberfest, fireworks, all those trust and agency accounts.
Brenda, I think there's also a small T&A when they ran those, the concerts in the theater. And then there was the actual Rocktoberfest line.
Right.
So if you could forward those to me,
I'll
I'd
do them all.
appreciate it. And they're definitely in T accounts.
Yep,
So, okay.
will
Great.
do.
Well,
Appreciate all your support on everything, and please get the word out about next Monday night. I think you are going to be quite amazed at what we've got to present to the community. Be well, everyone.
thanks, sir.
Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. And you too, Rick.
And yeah, Rick, and as a representative of RPAC, thanks for all your hard work all year. Not
You're
just
the
on
best.
And now we will pivot to Water Department, Mr. Englishby.
Good evening.
How are you?
Not too bad. How are you guys?
Good.
Good. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Hello. Hey, Larry.
Oh. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Jim. Jim, Jim will be covering, the operational stuff in the water department, but as it turns out, like it is most years, it's some of the financial stuff that's really driving this whole budget. Some of the funding related to the Romberg pump station and a few other things. So we'll go through a lot of that, but I'll get Jim's budget up here on the screen, and we can walk through some of the major items. And Jim, you can skip over the really major items like the Romberg pump station. Brenda and I will cover that, of course.
Okay.
Here. All right. See that?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So, Jim, if you want to run down some of the more significant items here, there's not too much that's on your plate, and any other aspects you want to talk about.
Well, we had a lot of water main breaks this year. Probably, I think it was around 15 within about 6 weeks. We had to buy a lot more parts this year, so I want to increase a couple of the lines a little bit as far as supply and equipment, a little bit more, because the price of parts are going up due to inflation. So professional fees need to go up a little bit higher. Our operating expenses went up a little bit more, so I'm asking for $5,000 for that. Let's see, purchases from water from Greenberg. We had a leak up there this year that I found, so that raised our cost a little bit more, but I found it the day after I kind of knew about it. It just happened to pop up out of the ground, so we found that. So hopefully that'll stay lower. That's about it. Utilities had to go up more because of inflation and fuel costs. A little bit more in the education. I'm going to probably be going to some workshops, a little more workshops this year as our regulations get a little more tougher. The thing coming up is our lead and copper. They're changing the rule. And part of the rule is we're going to have to change any lead service lines eventually, about 5% a year. So it's probably about 2 a year for 10 years. But since we don't own them, I'm trying to figure out how that's going to work with the Department of Health. So I'll have more information about that as time goes on. That's about it for me.
Brenda, the health insurance item, was that a reallocation?
It was after looking at the amount of time we allocate, some of the services that the finance office provides to the water department. We have a dedicated person, Monica, who takes care of all the water billing, inquiries that come in from the public. It's really a full-time position, and that coupled with, running the payroll, paying bills, it's an allocation of one policy for the administration in my office. So it's part of that, and also just the increase in health insurance combined. So that's an increase of 31,000 between a reallocation and the increase in healthcare. I don't know if I want to talk about the band principal. That's just the latest borrowing of this past year. It was the only thing we borrowed for was water infrastructure purchases, because that's an item that we could not really use our fund balance for, because as you're aware, the water department is self-sustaining. It doesn't rely on taxpayer money. It's from the water sales. So that was the bond, the additional amount of the bond that was taken out this past fall. The interest payment is then due the next year after that. So that'll be paid in December of next year. So there's an increase of band principal, interest, but overall debt service, the last line, that's actually a decrease because we are retiring debt at the same time. So it's pretty much a wash between the debt service, but it's on 3 different lines. I guess we can talk about, Larry, we can talk about the changes at the Romberg pump station.
Yeah. So the Romberg, just for some background, the Romberg pump station was a joint project done 30 plus years ago, 35 years ago. It's a supply. It supplies the village with basically all of our water now. And it was a joint project with Greenberg. We split the cost 50-50. Greenberg runs the pump station and bills us based upon which community is taking water from that pump station. So Greenberg uses some, Irvington uses some, and we pay proportionately based on that. Greenberg in about 2015 or 16 did a rehabilitation of that pump station. So as I said, it was built in the late 80s, early 90s. It needed a rehabilitation work done. They borrowed for that rehabilitation, and I believe, we were, not me personally, but I think Jim, you were probably in the loop as to the work that was being done. But they, for whatever reason, they never charged us for our portion of that bond. I think it's a 20-year bond, and we should have been paying since 2016 the principal and interest, our share of the principal and interest from that project, which is 50-50. So, we've been in discussions with them for probably the last 6 months about this and how best to handle it. So we're not, if we had to catch up all at once, we would owe them, probably about $450,000 right now, which we don't have, as you can imagine, and not in our water department anyway. So what we did is they agreed, and we discussed the idea of taking what's owed along with what will be owed in the future and spreading it over the remainder of the bond. So that amount is that large, that $160,000. So that's That's a new item. It will be, about that amount, maybe it's slightly declining over time. But that item will continue on for the next 15 years to pay for that bond. And that's the big chunk of what we're dealing with. If you, what I did is, and I didn't talk with Brenda about this before we came on tonight, but I prepared a real simple spreadsheet to show you the inner workings of some of the moving parts of what's going on in this water budget, because it's going to involve a water rate increase, and you need to be, understanding of the moving parts and the decisions that have to be made about that will impact what that rate increase might be. So I do have a separate spreadsheet. If you just let me jump off of this for a second.
Larry, before you get off on that detail, I assume the work that Greenberg did was capital improvement and therefore bonded. You said it was a 15-year bond, but we're paying for it out of our cash flow, effectively, out of the water department cash flow. Is there no way you can get bonded for our water department to maybe, I don't know how it would affect the payment requirements?
Right. So no, the Greenberg bonded the entire project, including Irvington's share. So they borrow the entire amount, and then through the operations of the Romberg pump station, we get billed our proportionate share of that debt service. So the money's already been bonded, and this is the annual payback each year that we need to keep making our share of it. So you can't bond something that's already been bonded, I think that's what you were asking about.
Yeah, and I guess they own the asset also.
Yeah, I mean, it's a joint, just like the rest of the pump station, it's a joint project. We have a 50% share of interest in that pump station. This was, as I said, this goes back to an intermunicipal agreement that dates back to the 80s. And it's our only supply of water at this point. So it was, at the time, it was not our only supply of water, but since the New Croton Aqueduct has been shut down and isn't providing water, right, Jim, to us at all?
It still provides water to the city, but it's we would have to filter it. We would have to filter it if we pulled it off of the aqueduct at that point. So
yeah,
we pull it off the Catskill and the Delaware now.
Right. And so the Catskill aqueduct water is what runs through the Romberg pump station.
And now with the new transmission line, they're able to put Delaware water through our pump station also.
Right.
So they're the Rumbrook and the Knollwood are interconnected now.
Gotcha.
So I think that was part of the money that they spent to improve that connection.
Right, because I think we were in a position without that interconnection between Delaware and Catskill, we were in the position of, if there was ever a failure or a shutdown of the Catskill water source, could have been severely restricted on our water supply.
So basically what Greenberg would do is they would fill up their East Irvington tank with Delaware water and then backfeed us via another connection. So now we have a direct connection from the Delaware through Rumbrook to our tank. We're not running it, floating off their system anymore. So it could be a problem during the summertime trying to float off somebody's system if there's high demand.
Right. Lead to water use restrictions and all of those things that we don't want to see happen. With that, let me just share a screen so I can give you a little different summary of this. All right. Yeah, I can. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit. Okay. Can you read that, or you need it bigger? No? Okay. All right. So all of the other items that we talked about, not counting the Rumbrook Greenberg bond, the total of the amounts that were on that budget that you just saw is $83,000. That's our salaries, benefits, debt service, and other inflationary things that Jim just talked about. Health insurance, I think, was one of the things. That's the amount over in total of what the budget would have gone up had it not been for the Greenberg bond. The Greenberg bond adds 160,000 to that, brings you up to the 243,000, which would have been the budget increase on that last page. That would have led directly to a approximately 10% rate increase. So if you do nothing more in order to cover those added expenses from the Greenberg bond and the regular operating expenses, we would need a 10% increase in rates. I'll show you a rate history just to put it in perspective shortly. But what we did is we made a couple of other adjustments in the budget to try to soften this a bit. They're a little aggressive, I mean, for anyone that knows Brenda and me, we try to be very conservative. We don't like to be aggressive on things. But we are suggesting appropriating $80,000 of surplus. We probably only have somewhere between $200,000 and $225,000 of surplus in the fund. We're just trying to nail that number down now.
Yeah. We just received a settled bill from Greenberg for the 2021 Romberg usage. It came on Friday after this was put together pretty much. So it was pretty much almost double what it was last year.
Our fund balance projections are probably closer to 200,000 by the end of the year.
Than 300, right?
Rather than 300 was what we thought, but in any case, we expect to end the year with a $200,000 fund balance. We would appropriate 80,000 of that, which is, more than we would usually recommend. In fact, we probably would usually recommend zero at this point, but because of this, we're trying to soften it a bit. We're also suggesting we have a $100,000 contingency in this fund. That $100,000 is there to cover the excessive water main breaks like we had this past year. And if we don't have a bad year on water breaks, then that amount was really built into the budget to try to increase the fund balance in this fund. Historically, this fund has been operating at a deficit for a long time. And only recently been funded enough to be positive. But we're suggesting taking that $100,000 contingency and bringing it down to 75 in the budget. So that also helps. So it brings what would have been a 10% increase down to about 5.5%, 5.6%, as you see there. So that's what's presented on that other page that we just had up on the screen. This is just a different way of showing it, different moving parts. But it's not a final answer. This is the way we're presenting it. If you think having a $200,000 fund balance on a fund that has about $2.5 million in revenues, if you think that's not enough or too much, then that would change the decision on what you use, whether you appropriate any of it to try to soften this rate increase. We thought that it's probably a little bit on the high side, but it's probably worth trying to soften this since it's a one-time, introducing this bond into the budget is a one-time thing that we have to swallow. So we thought that it was appropriate to try to do that a little more aggressively this year and see how it goes and try to keep the rate increase a little bit more manageable.
Larry, I have a question. You said it's a one-time thing, but isn't this 160,000 going to be part now of the budget going forward for the rest of the life of the bond?
It is. So it's a one-time increase, I guess is the better way to say it. So it's an increase this year, but once it's in there, your rate structure is such that you'll be able to cover it. The amount will stay pretty much level of the bond. So you don't have to. Your budget doesn't have to increase from one year to the next. This is the first year that it has to increase where you need more revenue in order to cover it.
I understand that, but the fact is that we would need a 10% increase to cover the increases to the budget plus the bond. And next year, it's going to be the same thing, right? Because there always are increases to the budget. There's always, salaries, benefits going up, inflationary impacts, et cetera. And then on top of it, we're going to have 160 again. So this is, if we're doing, if we're
It's not a
taking
new-
out,
It's not a new 100, it's not a new 160 at that point. It's already, it's not
Okay.
new at that point. So I'm not sure how to describe it differently.
is it
So
because the price was set up not with 160 in mind, and we would be setting the price going forward in mind with 160 in mind?
correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And the 160 stays relatively constant. It slightly declines over time, but it's basically constant. So if you keep your rate the same and your payment is the same, then there's no need for future large increases like this. All things being equal, everything else being
Right.
equal.
No, of course. So in other words, the having to take money out of the surplus and to reduce contingency, that element of it would be a one-time thing. We wouldn't have to do this every single year to make the 160 because we will have budgeted for it going forward where it wasn't budgeted for going back. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
And the only issue with appropriating surplus, and we've had this conversation over on the tax general fund side when we first started talking about tax rates, is that, you know, appropriating surplus is something that makes sense as long as you do it in a controlled way. Because if you appropriate a large amount of surplus in 1 year, then next year you need to reappropriate the same large amount. Otherwise, you have to raise taxes, or in this case, raise water rates. So next year we either have to appropriate 80 again, or we back it off somewhat. And I think our plan was that we'd be able to back off of that 80,000 that's being appropriated, back it off maybe to 40. We have to see where it goes. You know, that'll be next year's discussion. But it's a way of softening the impact rather than introducing a full 160,000 of, you know, and place all of the burden on the water rate and the water customers. You know what I'm saying?
But we still have the problem that we have $105,000 that we're throwing into it to keep the rate, to cut the rate in half effectively. But next year, we still got that 4 point, whatever it is, 4.38% deficit, right? I mean,
If you don't reappropriate the $80,000 surplus, then you'll have a gap that you need to cover. But at that point, we'll have a better picture on where the fund is, and maybe we only reappropriate 40 of it instead of 80, and it'll be further softening of the impact. I mean, it's hard to
You're
project.
spreading out the increase over several years.
Right. It's spreading it out is what it is, rather than absorbing it. But again, you know, these are policy decisions. So if you look back at a history of the rates, which I can show you right now, if you'd like, it might be the right time.
Yep.
Give me a second here. Multiple screens is a good thing and a bad thing. All right. Let me increase this a bit. Oops. So there's a history of our rate increases. You know, in the last at least 3 years, it's been roughly in line with inflation or less. You know, there's been a few bumps up in there. Obviously, I can't even go back to the 2015 year to think of what that was. But you know, you have the option of you know, trying to put this behind you all at once and increase rates a more significant amount, or soften it in a way that we presented it here, or somewhere in between. You know, it's really.
I actually, my gut here is that we should soften it some, but you know, if CPI has been say 7%, why don't we just almost match that, and you know, it just gives us less wood to chop next year. You know, if we take off, say, you know, instead of 80,000, put in like 60,000, something like that, and get us to around 7%. It's just less we have to do next year. I think one other quick thing is that it's nice that we have any surplus at all, because for about half Mark and my time on the board, we actually had a deficit in the water fund that had built up over decades, that we finally got. I think we eliminated that in 2019, something like that.
Yeah, finally, yeah.
About 3 years. Yep.
Yeah, so you know, it's nice that we even have surplus to talk about,
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe we don't have to offset all of it, you know, or we're not offsetting all of it, but we can offset a little bit less. Again, this is a little bit of semantics and, you know, playing with numbers, but, you know, to me, it's, if we kind of always have targeted inflation, you know, luckily for us this year with the surprise increase, you know, we can kind of target inflation.
Makes sense.
I think the other wild card here for, you know, particularly Arlene and Mitch is that, you know, the increases that come from the New York City Water Board are often high. Luckily, it's not, you know, all of our cost, but, you know, they're typically like 6, 7, 8% every year. So, you know, we're kind of in line with water. I don't know why water is getting so expensive. I guess we're replacing a lot of infrastructure, but, you know, so that's the other piece of this is that water just is expensive.
Yeah, historically, yeah, I mean, really going back, you know, 25 years, New York City was selling water to the upstate customers, of which, you know, Irvington, Greenberg were all considered upstate customers. And they were selling it at a ridiculously low rate. I mean, historically it was, and hadn't changed the rate adequately for many years. They finally did a rate study, realized that they were basically hemorrhaging money every time they sold water to the upstate customers. So they've been on probably a couple of decade long effort to try to, you know, bring that up and recoup the costs for what they lost over all the years. And, you know, so that's why a lot of the increases have been much more than inflation for that reason. But, you know, it just adds to this, to the trouble in trying to run a water department, frankly.
Well, how much what's the impact of this year's increase from New York, from the city?
We haven't received a rate increase. We haven't received notification yet. That comes later on.
July
Yes, sir.
1st.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's around July.
Yeah, we'll know in July.
You're cut out, Larry.
Yeah, I know. Someone muted me, but that's okay.
That was me, Larry. I was trying to mute myself and I muted Larry. I feel all powerful right now.
So
What were you saying? About 5? You were saying?
Yeah, we assume a 5% increase, and that's in a normal non-inflationary year. So we'll see what happens this year. But
so how does that flow through? Not making a joke, but
yeah,
what does that actually represent to us in terms of consumption?
I mean, the actual water purchase number itself is probably a quarter of the entire operation of the Romberg pump station. So, you know, and Romberg itself is probably 50% of the whole overall fund operation. So it's not a super significant number, but when you apply that to the revenues that we have to deal with, and you apply it to the customers that we have, you know, if our costs go up in water costs $80,000, that's a significant number, or 50,000, let's say. That's a significant number to spread over the customers that we have. So it's not, I mean, just because, let's put it this way, just because the New York City goes up 5 or 10% doesn't mean that our rates have to go up 5 or 10%. It's only a portion of that. Does that help?
And is
Go ahead, Mark.
that in the model right now, in the model that includes the 5.6% or the 7.2% or whatever it's going to be increase?
It is, but it's only an assumption because we don't know what our rates are from New York City as of July 1st, but we make assumptions about it.
Right.
Brian, can I ask again, Brian, where we came up with the 7.2 whatever, other than it's splitting the difference between 5.6 and 10? Is there an inflation number that?
7.5, isn't that the number?
Yeah, it's CPI has been running above 7%. So that's just kind of where I ballparked that one from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read the other day, I thought the news was 7.5 was the adjusted
Yeah,
inflation.
it's actually continuing to go up. I think January was 7, and I think February is 7.2, and I think 7.5 is the latest. So it's, and now with gas prices continuing to spiral, it's going to only get worse. So
we're all hosed. No matter
Yeah.
what.
Well, we can rework the numbers. I mean, that's the point of the workshop, is to get, where you want to go with decisions like this. So
But
we can rework the numbers a bit and see, see how it looks after we regroup from this.
Boy, I never thought I'd see the day where we're more conservative than you and Brenda. After all these years, that's the first time that's happened. I think.
Probably, yeah. I did preface the discussion like that, but no, look, I mean, we wanted to present what the options are and see
Right.
where you were falling on it. So,
So I know this is not water department, so excuse me, Jim, but I'm trying to figure out, we've been listening to a lot of departmental increases, except for the building department. So when do we get another high-level summary of the impact in terms of, the tax rates, projected tax rates? I guess that's one of the things that I'd like to see as soon as possible in order to make some other decisions about things like water rates.
Sure.
I can do a recap. We'll certainly do a presentation at the next meeting. If I can get something together sooner, I will. I was able to get a final rate from the town of Greenberg for assessment. The assessment roll has been finalized. So that's a good thing, because at least we know what we're dealing with there. And then I'll put together what we have on all these departmental requests to come out with what a projected tax rate looks like. So if anything, I can do a tax rate table and give a recap of what the departmental requests look like.
I think, I mean, as we've been going along,
We've been keeping our numbers up to date.
Yeah, and the vast majority of what we all talked about were not surprises. They were things that we did factor into the original presentation that we had and discussion we had back in January. We did have a catch-all, if you recall, that related to contingency associated with inflationary items. And so we had a little bit of a factor in there. We didn't know where they were going to get spread out to at that
And
point.
energy was the other item, was 2 items we budgeted for.
Or
Yeah.
just general inflation and then energy costs. Yeah. So I think
We're going to reanalyze those, because then we can now allocate what we put away into various departmental lines.
So we may
Right,
not
but
be
your
as
thought
bad off as
process
it
is
seems.
So we
Sorry,
won't be that far off. Sorry, Mark.
yeah, I think
saying the
we're
same
okay
thing.
so far. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we're okay so far. You can quote us on that, but we'll get you numbers for sure.
all right.
Any other questions?
anything else for Jim, or let him go?
Jim's also responsible for the sewer department, and there are rates to be set for the sewer department separately, but I don't think there's any change in that.
There's no change there. No, it was a level budget, aside from a few, little increase on one, a decrease on another. There was no rate increase in the sewer department.
And most of that
And the sewer rates.
is allocated.
There's no, yeah,
Allocations. It's not.
right.
So I
But
guess,
there's no change in rates.
one of my concerns, echoing what Jim was pointing out, was we had a lot of water main problems, especially seemingly a lot of water main breaks this winter, on a winter that didn't seem to be quite as bad, but maybe I imagining it different than some years. It certainly hasn't been the coldest winter in the last 5 years, but it's maybe a mid-grade winter. I'm just wondering what that's indicating to you. I mean, just a result of the age of the pipes, is that it?
Yes, a lot of the areas there where it was old, but I'd respectfully disagree with the temperature. It was very cold this year. A lot of times we were out there, it was in the negatives with the wind chill. It's a lot of the older areas where the ground heaved. It's cast iron pipe, which tends to break easier. It stayed cold for a longer period of time than it normally does. Usually you get a little more fluctuation. One of the pipes that we dug up was from 1886.
I got your money's
So-
worth on that one.
Oh, yeah. So, the pipes are getting older, but I had some money put in the capital last year to come up with a water main replacement list according
Right.
to age and how many breaks we had. So we already have Erie and Langdon up to Washington Avenue, which is a candidate. So there's ones that already popped out this year that Willow Street's another one, Woodbine, a little portion of that. So there's definitely areas that we can improve upon because there has been some improvement in the area, but there are still, areas where there's portions of it are older pipe that need to be replaced.
Right, that was my next question. It was going to be proactive replacement. So sounds like
Yes.
you're building a model for that already.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Well, we need to get a bridge, River Road done, down by Bridge Street area. And we have Mountain Road, which is, we buy purchase water from Greenberg and then we sell it back to the customers up there. So if we lose water up on Mountain Road, it's a lot more costly than a regular water main break. And we have a history of a large amount of breaks on that street. So I'm going to replace from the Tank Road down to the Parkway, which should, it's very hard to find breaks up there. Usually you have to dig 4 or 5 holes because it's all concrete and it's hard to hear because of the Parkway. So you can lose a lot of money quickly up on Mountain Road.
And then I think you're looking also at some of the low-lying areas at Ardsley Park. Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Erie, Langdon, from Erie to Washington. Well, we found an interesting one on Hudson Road West where the water main actually goes over the aqueduct. It's only buried 8 inches in the ground. So when we had a water main break, there was water shooting out of the ground about 10 feet in the air. So when we took the first shovel full of dirt, we're like, oh, there's the water main. So we fixed it. There's really nothing much you can do with that. That's the first break we've had there, and since I can remember. So there's definitely areas that stand out, and I've been speaking to Doug Hahn, and we're going over those. So we're trying to get a list together, according to age, at least 10 years out, and we'll keep adding to that list as time goes on.
So what was going on at the base of Harriman and Broadway, by the way? Was that all Con Ed, or it looked like there was some water department work going on down there too?
Well, Con Ed had, obviously they had water in their main on Harriman Road. So
Yeah.
They dug a pit over there right next, right near our water main. And I just think it just happened to be leaking there. So we did a repair over there. It's actually.
Okay, I was just wondering
line.
if it was a follow-on or whatever had happened, but
Yeah. So what it ended up being was a valve that was a closed valve and a packing leak. So we ended up having to cut the valve out and put a new valve in and keep it shut because it's an old bypass.
All
So
right.
that was the
Thank you.
pipe from 1886, actually.
all right.
Any other questions?
I just really appreciate that you're keeping on top of everything, Jim. It's great.
Thank you, Mark. I try.
Yeah.
I just also want to thank you for all the time you spent explaining water rates to me and how this whole system works. So it's made this a lot easier to understand.
Absolutely.
A lot of time explaining that to me. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, just thanks for everything, Jim, all year. Appreciate all the hard work, and I think you have a great team too. So for a small team, you guys get a lot done.
You're only as good as your team members, so they're very good. They do a good job, and they're very, very dedicated.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks again. And if you want to come back when you either as part of the capital budget or a separate meeting and kind of talk about the replacement schedule and the replacement plan, feel free to reach out. We're happy to have you come back anytime.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, good. That'd be good.
Great. Well, thanks very much. And
All right.
now we'll move on back to the mundane. Authorization to approve change order number 1 for the Dow's Lane Culvert project.
Okay, so this is an item, as you said, related to the Dow's Lane culvert replacement. It involves the regrading of the area north of Dow's Lane and west of Broadway. So that corner area where we've been working with some of the drainage, there's some regrading work that needs to be done there, and an additional catch basin to be installed. This wasn't anticipated as part of that project, but it's something that our engineer believes needs to be done. So the amount of that change order is $8,386. I don't know, much of the Dow's Lane repair work will be, we expect will be covered by FEMA. I don't know if something like this will be, this is probably an upgrade or an improvement, but it's something that needs to be done for a drainage purposes. So.
Great. Anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I'll start reading. Resolve to approve change order number 1 in the amount of $8,386 and to authorize the village administrator to execute said change order. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Great. Next is appointment to the Climate Smart Communities, appointment of a Climate Smart Communities Program Coordinator.
So just by background, there's no change in our Climate Smart Community Task Force Coordinator. Judy Fremer is continuing. One of the comments that we received in our bronze certification is that we needed to elaborate a bit on the job description and the responsibilities of the coordinator. So the resolution that you're about to read is elaborates on her role and her responsibilities.
Excellent. Resolved to appoint Judy Fremer as coordinator of the Climate Smart Communities Program, who as such is responsible for recruiting candidates for the CSC Task Force, communicating regularly with the CSC Task Force members, organizing the activities of the CSC Task Force, updating the Board of Trustees and other village officials on the progress of the CSC Task Force, collect and organize documentation needed for CSC certification. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And next is a related item, volunteer appointments to the Climate Smart Communities Task Force. Resolved to appoint.
This is I'll let you go on, but just real quick, this is the up-to-date list of our task force members, and we also expect to have a list of students. We're just working through having an initial meeting with them to make sure everyone's committed to it. And once we have them, we'll have a list of students for you to appoint to the task force as well.
Okay. Resolved to appoint the following volunteer members to the Climate Smart Communities Task Force with the term to expire December of 2022. Coordinator Judy Fremer, a member Tom Thacker, member Kate Crawl, member Nicola Coddington, member Ariella Toman, member Evan Parganos, member Francis Shea, member Charlotte Binns, member Gren Merkin, member Sophia Johnson, trustee liaison Arlene Burgos, village administrator Larry Schaffler. And I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
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 All in favor? Let's start with Steve.
Mitchell raised his hand.
All in favor. All right. Next up is appointment of a deputy clerk treasurer.
Okay, so we have as I had reported to the board separately, we have a vacancy in the clerk treasurer's office. Our long-time person in charge of payroll and benefits and some other accounting tasks, Anna Maria Kusiak, is retiring. And we're recommending the appointment of Stacy French. Her title is Deputy Clerk Treasurer. And we're looking forward to welcoming her with your appointment.
Any questions? Resolved to appoint Stacy French as Deputy Clerk Treasurer at an annual salary of $72,777 effective March 8th, 2022. This position is subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. I will make the motion if I can have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Good.
Next up is review of board priorities for 2022. trying to think of the draft that I have in front of me.
Well, I mean, I have the marked up draft that Arlene submitted, right? So we could work off of that. If you have any other comments, I mean, those are the only written comments that we saw. But if you had any other comments along the way, we can continue to mark them up on this document. But is that?
Yeah, I think my only overall arching comment on all this is having so many priorities, and this is, you know, we don't have to even answer this tonight, having so many priorities, which are all great, not having any priorities at all. Like, I almost feel like we've come up with a list of everything that we, you know, think is a good idea and everything we want to we would want to accomplish if we had, you know, unlimited resources and unlimited time. And when you have so many things, does it really serve to focus us? And I know we have the areas of primary focus, but there's still like, what, 16 or 17 things on that. So, you know, I think this is a great document, and it's like it's almost like a mini comprehensive plan that we've started to design here. But do we almost want to, I mean, again, we don't have to do this tonight necessarily, but do we want to take the areas of primary focus and have, like, you know, the 5 that we, you know, want to accomplish right away? Like, it's almost like, do we keep breaking this down more? Was my only kind of takeaway. And, you know, it's because it's hard to argue with any of the goals on here, I think. But a priority list obviously has to be prioritized. And, you know, there's definitely things we can work on. You know, we don't have to have one priority at a time and knock them off, but, you know, do we have to maybe tweak this and say, what are our top priorities to make sure, you know, to focus on right away and that sort of thing. So I'll just plant that seed as we kind of go ahead with the discussion. But it just feels like there's a lot of priorities. And, you know, again, do I disagree with any of them? No. But when does this become kind of a statement of, you know, kind of support versus a real priority list? That this is my question.
Well, related to that is, you know, it's the problem that it's not really a resource chart, and it's not really a Gantt chart, to use old-fashioned terminology, in terms of how things spread out in relation to, you know, in parallel to one another. So it's very hard, without getting into a much deeper task flow analysis, it's much harder to see what some of these things are. Some of them are general background stuff, and some of them are definitely fighting for the same resources. So, you know, so I hear what you're saying, Brian.
Yeah, and I don't think there's I think it's like one of those things where, you know, when a group or a trustee or whatever has kind of had a priority, none of us have said, you know, no, that's not a priority for the board. Let's just eliminate that. And we've kind of ended up with this big list of, you know, 16 primary focus, 12 ongoing, and kind of 10 long-term, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I think, you know, as we have any kind of downtime, we can always start working on things in the list. But, you know, do we want to work on this as it is, tweak this list, and then, you know, take another crack at it and see if we can, you know, kind of divide up at least the areas of primary focus into, like, you know, urgent or whatever. And I think, Mark, then we can kind of look and say, okay, what timing makes sense? And there's some of the timing on here, you know, starting early 22, complete by fall 20. You know, like we do have some of them have, you know, timeframes on them, but for the ones that don't, you know, and some of them, like, implement the recommendation of the police reform and reimagination plan. I think that's a great goal, but it's almost like we have to get that second list to, you know, kind of, you know, look at that again, you know. So I think that there's, you know, there's this list is almost like a great starting point more than a priority list to me.
And some of it, frankly, is a little bit of it is philosophical. It's almost like, you know, they're not specific. Some of them are not phrased as specific tasks in of themselves. I think it's more.
Agreed.
But
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just apart from everything else, the one thing that I see missing, unless I'm missing something, because I read this multiple times, is the South Buckout Street memorial space. I don't see that on here at this point. I thought it had been, but maybe I'm misreading stuff.
Yeah, or maybe we thought that was going to be in process already and it didn't have to be on here, but that should definitely be on there again, now that it's like been delayed.
I mean, I guess, is this, so this document, and I guess you have, it's sort of areas of primary focus, ongoing initiatives and long-term goals. Maybe it just needs some restructuring in terms of if the idea is what, sort of like what things might be accomplished this year, right? You have sort of like the overarching, which is like the beginning, right? Which is like, in general, these are the things that we sort of care about and we'll work on short, medium, and long term. But maybe and those things can stay on this document, right? As the things that will be longer term, mid to longer term, but maybe one of the focus we want to sort of like get down to in this year, for example, right? Like what are the things we know we can accomplish in this year? So that just this document is good that like overall, over time, these are the things we care about and hope to accomplish, and different things take different times, right? Like some projects are just by their very nature long-term projects, but maybe there needs to be on a more granular level what can be accomplished this year, right? Like these are the concrete things that we're going to focus on getting done this year in this bigger bucket of all the things we care about.
I think historically, that's what that first area was meant to be, was really, the items that after the year's over, you can look back on and cross, most, not necessarily all, but at least most of them off.
Okay.
After a year, realistically. So that's
And at
probably
least the ones that you put dates on in terms of starting dates. So
look, let me give a little disclaimer on the dates. I know Brian had asked for the dates and they went on there during an initial iteration, but it's changed a bunch since then. And frankly, those dates haven't been updated. I kind of wanted to wait until it was less of a moving target and then really put some thought into how things could be planned out. It was hard to do it while it was moving. So don't focus on the dates as much as what is basically.
No, I wasn't really focused on the dates. I'm just saying there were dates applied. So
and we should, especially for the primary focus items, to really drill down and say when you're going to get started and when you expect to be done on things. So how do you want to go about doing this? Do you want, rather than having a 5-person editing session, do you want to have me work with one trustee or mayor, or whatever you think's most efficient? I'm just trying to think. I mean, it's virtually impossible on Zoom, frankly, but I'm happy to work with someone or some two to try to know.
I'm happy to work with you on it, to just maybe try to give it a different structure.
Yeah, I'm happy to try to work on that as well. To kind of slim it down without losing some of the important things that we still want to work on, but aren't necessarily like as time sensitive, or maybe they aren't. Maybe they are time sensitive, but maybe we can't work on them right away, or I think we can tweak this some more. And Arlene, I did appreciate you coming back with with your edits, and maybe we take another shot at that and do this again.
Okay.
All right. So I'll set something up for the three of us then. We can do it. We can do
Zoom,
it.
your favorite.
Well, you can either do it on Zoom or we can do it in person, whatever. I think it's easier in person, to be honest with you, for something like this,
Sure.
I'll check with your schedules on all that.
Yeah. Friday might work for me.
The only thing I just want to say is I do like the idea of, pulling out this year's major focus, and then even though there's various levels of priority to follow on stuff, I think that we need to have kind of a whenever bucket. Like these are things, to me, for instance, continuing to implement aspects of adopted comprehensive plan. I mean, I don't know if I would call that primary focus. I don't know that we're really all that focused on that right now. We've gotten all the low and medium hanging fruit, I think, from the comprehensive plan. So maybe that's really more of a background thing that's done as extra time is available rather than being a primary thing.
Yeah, or like my point on that one now is even, I don't even remember what's not adopted yet. Yeah, so, I think maybe just looking at that, and I don't even know if we want to, like, if we haven't done it by now, I don't know what that says about those goals, but
Well, exactly. That's what I said. I mean, some of these have to get unwrapped a little bit, and maybe they don't deserve to be primary focus at this point any longer.
And with Marianne's help, I did circulate a list of kind of the status of each of the comprehensive plan recommendation. I think the reason it feels like we haven't accomplished all that much, although we've accomplished more than you think, but I think, we did spend an inordinate amount of time on one, as you know, so on the North Broadway. So that kind of puts you back 2 years, or 18 months at least. But no, it's no question that, there's items in there that are still pertinent and could be pulled out and potentially made priorities, individual priorities. Where they end up on the list is up to you, but there are items on there that were important and are still important.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, I'm not really saying anything about how long it's taken, but there are some things from the 1983 comprehensive plan or whatever that haven't been implemented yet, and they sort of some of them got subsumed into the latest version.
Right.
Or 1983. I mean, whatever the one that was
2003.
2003.
Yeah, 2003. But some of those got rolled up and some got left to the side. So we're far enough out from the comprehensive plan revision that we probably can really do an inventory of what's left and what looks like it's really going to move forward.
Oh, yeah, no, we have that list, and we can talk about it individually, but I mean, there's definitely important things in there that need to be looked at. One of them is the Lower Main Street transit-oriented development rezoning effort, which is a kind of a broad look at what's going to happen around the train station. Now, it's not pertinent right now, but it will be. So,
right, and we don't want New York State taking over our local zoning.
Yeah, that almost got
transit-oriented areas.
Yeah, and you know what? If we had enacted that change, if we put in that zoning, it would have been probably stomped on by the way the legislation was written. New York State. It's very interesting. Anyway, okay, so I'll set up a time for Brian and Arlene for us to meet, and we'll come back to the board with a different product, different look at it.
Sounds good.
Good.
I guess if anybody has any other priorities that they wanted to bring up tonight, that's fine too. I know, Mark, you mentioned that the memorial is not on there, so we can add that back.
Yeah, I made a note of that. Yeah.
But I don't know if anybody else had anything else, substantive and not format wise. If not, we're good. I mean, we have discussed this obviously a few times already, so
We'll get there.
I just think I was overwhelmed when I saw it again. And I think I was reading it yesterday, and I was like, we have so much on here, which isn't a bad thing. I think it is like it prevents things from falling off the radar screen for sure. But I think when there's so many things, sometimes it almost, you don't start on it. I think we could almost come up with like some kind of ranking system of things we want to work on, which will be a combination of importance and, maybe ease of doing it or whatever. Like we can figure that out, but
yeah. Good.
Yeah. And if anybody has any,
I think that makes a lot of sense. Just so we don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah. It's just funny when you have to come up with an executive summary for ourselves, but it's okay. But I just think it seemed, maybe we're just being ambitious, which isn't a bad thing either. So, but if anybody has inspiration during the week or whatever, just shoot over any new priorities. But I guess if we're done with that, we'll move on to reports of board, standing committees and officers and trustee liaison reports. And I will start from top to bottom. Mark, you are first on my screen.
Well, nothing really new except to mention that we have a couple of issues on the ARB side, that staffing issues that have to be considered. And I know Larry and you are both in the loop on that.
Yeah,
we're going to be meeting not that I'm doing my report here, but we're going to be meeting probably later next week with the ARB chair and try to talk about some solutions going forward. So you'll hear more about that after that.
Great. Next, Larry.
No report today.
Mitch.
Okay, so the library has a few programs coming up that they wanted me to mention. They have programs for adults, March 10th, the Westchester County Fair Housing Law and You. It's a Zoom meeting. Thursday, March 17th is the Thursday Evening Book Club. They're discussing Anthony Horowitz's Magpie Murders. That's also by Zoom. Thursday, March 29th at 7 p.m. There's a lecture, Ida Lupino, From Reluctant Actress to Relentless Director. That's also Zoom. And then they have some programs for young adults. The DIY Essential Oil Bracelet. That's an in-person event. So yeah, and there's a lot of story time and craft programs for younger children as well. So essentially they want to have everyone go to their website and check out all the events and see some of them are on Zoom and some of them are in person. Also, they still have a limited number of COVID test kits available. Obviously, a lot of people pick some up, but they still have some more. So there's limit 1 package per adult. 1 package has 4 tests in it, and they're just going to distribute those until they are gone. So they urge people to come and get them. The school board, they're having a March 22nd at 7:15 p.m. a public hearing on the veterans tax exemption. Also, over the last 2 weeks, the district released the root cause analysis related to the district's diversity work and facilitated a public workshop on the topic. The reports are posted on the website, and the video of the meeting is posted on the Facebook page. There'll be another public session, and people can register for it through a link on the Facebook page and also from Saturday's district newsletter. I don't think there's a date yet for that, or at least there wasn't at the time that that Dave checked in with me with the school board stuff. And for the theater, I think most of you know, but Greg, Alan, and Ryan Frame met with Larry and Ed Marin, and it seems like things are moving really well towards, Greg and felt he had really strong direction on how to go back to the designers. So it looks like the HVAC program is on a really good path. So that's a really good thing. So thank you so much, Larry, to you, and I'm just glad that that's moving forward. So that's all I got.
Great. And Arlene.
Okay, so I'm not going to go over both Greg and Jim send me a nice little detailed memo. I think some of us get on all of the water main breaks and the winter storm activity, but I think most people in Irvington are super grateful to the work that they do, and we all are very aware because they really are great, and they're out there clearing the streets and making us all safer and able to move. So they do a fantastic job. So just wanted to say that. And then Chief Pignatelli had a few announcements. This past Sunday, March 6th, there was a mass at ICC honoring Irvington Police Officer George Duggan, who was killed in the line of duty on March 3rd, 1929. Officer Duggan, who was only 28 at the time, left behind a wife and 2 children, 2 young children. And we're thankful that he's remembered and honored each year for the sacrifice he made to his community. There was an event scheduled for October for Detective Dave Walsh, which is now going to be held on Saturday, April 9th from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Immaculate Conception Gym. There will be food and raffles and t-shirts, music, and more. And for more information, you can contact the Irvington PBA. Flyers are going to be distributed this week. And for those of us who know Detective Walsh, he's a great guy. And people should be, show up to support him. Lastly, we urge all residents to continue to lock their vehicles in Irvington along with the rest of Westchester County. We've been experiencing a high number of stolen vehicles and larcenies from vehicles. Oftentimes, If a vehicle is locked, Chief Pignatelli says the perpetrator is going to likely move to another car. Also, especially locking your vehicles at night. My husband's from California. He likes to leave things on the car seat and leave his doors open and leave the car. So don't do what Jorge does. Make sure that you lock your cars and take your stuff and don't put it in plain sight. Those are just good public service announcements from the IPD. And that's all I have to report.
Great. And village administrators report.
Report tonight.
All right. Village clerk treasurer.
Other than doing budget and training new employees and getting ready for Anna's retirement, we're okay.
And village attorney's report.
No report.
All right. Public comment. Review of action items, Larry?
Well, there's, the adding the South Buckout Memorial to the priority list, but there's, other than that, and there's nothing specific like that.
All right. I will make a motion to adjourn. If I can have a second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
And you have the link for the meeting with
Yes.
council. Great. Have a good night, everyone.
See you all in a minute.
Okay, bye-bye.